Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Friday Night, Late Night, Friday Night, Young at Heart, featuring nursery rhymes, stories, songs, poems, Mother Goose, Aesop's fables, Lewis Carroll, limericks, larks, and such, to keep us all young at heart. And I'm Father James DeLucio, back in the Paulist Fathers Rectory Library, ready to share with you the story of Felicia and her pot of pinks. It comes to us from France. Do you recall the story? It's not as well known, of course, as Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, Rumpelstiltskin. Have I shared with you Rumpelstiltskin? I don't recall. I'll have to go back and look. And Aladdin and the Lamp and others. Well, let us begin without delay. I'm not going to read it to you. I'm going to just tell you the story this time. So here we go. And take notes. It's convoluted, but fun. All right, there is an old laborer, and he's about to die, and he calls his two adult children together. They all live together in a little cottage by the wood, and he says to them, "My children, I am leaving this world, but before I do, I'll bestow upon you what I have left. There's a cottage, and then I received from your mother when we married, from her dowry, a bed of straw and 2 chairs. And somehow or another I mysteriously came in possession of this hen. And, behold, a pot of pinks that I have nurtured carefully all these years, and a silver ring, both of which were given to me by a mysterious lady who visited one night, and she insisted that upon my death, that the pot of pinks and the silver ring must go to my daughter. And so I promised that you would have these, Felicia. The house, the straw bed, and the chairs go to you, Bruno." And then he died. Now, these siblings had a wonderful relationship, kind and sharing, friendly-like. But now that the father had died, Bruno became very arrogant, selfish, greedy, and condescending. And so, when Felicia sat on one of the chairs, "Off!" he said, "This chair belongs to me," the other one as well. And he banished her to her room. And when it was time for the meal, the hen had laid the eggs. Bruno ate the eggs and tossed the shell out to Felicia, who had to go into the woods to gather berries for her sustenance. Terrible state of affairs, but Felicia is kind and patient and worried. Something must be wrong with my brother. And so she would pray for him, and she took excellent care of the pinks, as if they were her very own pet, beloved. At first she wept tears as she grieved her father and grieved the wickedness of her brother, and her tears watered the pinks, and they flourished. She took beautiful care of them, and the ring she kept on her finger, in fear that Bruno, of course, would come and steal it one day. Now, it just so happened that one night she couldn't sleep. The moon was full. It seemed like a magical summer evening, and she was beckoned into the woods, and she realized, too, that her pinks were in need of water. She was feeling rather joyful. She had no tears to water them, so she took a pitcher, and she knew of a beautiful fountain in the middle of the wood that had the most sweet-tasting, the most delectable, refreshing water that could be found. She was not greedy, so she would only go to this from time to time, but this night seemed perfect. So she does go into the wood to the fountain, and there, to her surprise, is a beautiful, beautiful woman with an entire entourage who were setting before her a sumptuous midnight banquet. In fact, she was a queen. Felicia startled to see such a sight, but the woman beckons her and asks her why she is in the forest at night, and if people have been kind to her. Felicia admits that things are pretty sorrowful for her at this time, but that she has these beautiful pinks and the silver ring, and she wanted to fill the pitcher to bring back to water the pinks. Well, the lady said, "By all means, dear, but first, please, enjoy this sumptuous banquet with me." And Felicia was very glad to oblige, when she takes her pitcher and fills the fountain with this sumptuous water. Lo and behold, the lady turns her ordinary pitcher into a pitcher of gold, strewn with diamonds, as if they were stars. Felicia is taken back, but the lady urges her to return to water her pinks. Did I show you pinks? These could be pinks. These could be pinks. Or they also could be petunias. Do you have any at home? I've never had any. So let's see. Oh, but Felicia is so taken back by the graciousness of the lady. She says, "Well, let me go back and water the pinks, but let me bring them to you. I think no one in all the world would take such magnificent care as you." "Oh, no," says the lady, "I dare not take your pinks. Please, please." "You are very generous and kind," said the lady, "and these are practically the only thing that you have in your world." So Felicia goes, and lo and behold, the pinks are not in her room. She searches everywhere. She cannot find them. Instead, well, who of course do you think took them, because she loved them so much? And in their place, on her windowsill, was a cabbage. Felicia took the cabbage, and she was about to throw it out the window, but the cabbage spoke. "Dear lady," said the cabbage, "be kind to me. Do, please, bring me outside. Put me with the other cabbages, for they are my brothers. But I will tell you that your brother Bruno has taken your pinks, and he has hidden them under his bed." Well, she looked and looked and looked. She couldn't find them. But she knew that the lady was waiting for her, so she ran back and said what had happened, that she couldn't find the pinks, but "Please, dear lady, take this ring." "Well, this is absolutely all you have. How can I do it?" But Felicia insisted, and the lady said, "Very well." So when Felicia goes back, there's a hen. That hen, spoken of heretofore, the hen begins to speak. The hen had never spoken before. And she said, "I have much to tell you." Under the bed of Bruno, that's where you're going to find the pinks." "Really?" Now Felicia was really taken, because the cabbage has spoken to her, and now, of course, the hen. "And I have something more," she said. "I'm surprised myself that I'm able to speak to you, because I haven't been able to speak all these years. But this is how you came to be." "Really?" said Felicia. And the hen tells her the story, that one night a woman came to the cottage. The hen was actually married to Felicia's father, and they had a little boy, Bruno, who was still in the cradle. And this mysterious, lovely woman, elegantly dressed, had just given birth to this beautiful girl whom she named Felicia. But she had a terrible time in childbirth, and she was about to die. She asked that the laborer and his wife take care of the girl. And she said, "Here are 2 gifts for your trouble, this beautiful pot of pinks and a silver ring. Cherish them, take good care, but don't let anyone know that you have them until the time it is time for you to expire. And then you must give the pinks and the ring to Felicia." So, of course, they agreed. And they also agreed to silence. But the laborer's wife was quite a gossip, and she really wasn't able to keep this marvelous story to herself. And lo and behold, within a year, another lady came by and punished her for being a gossip and turned her into a hen. The poor laborer thought his wife had gone missing or was kidnapped or had died and raised the two children by himself. The hen, his wife, all the while being there, but unable to speak until, for some reason, she cannot say why, this very evening, she's able to speak and tell Felicia her story. Felicia is like totally amazed. Totally. And then she found out something else. Why did the woman, who really was a queen, come to the laborer's house that night? And the hen had all the details. But to cut to the quick, it was simply this. She was a queen. She had 11 daughters. The king was fed up with all these women in his house, and he told his wife that if she gave birth to another girl, making 12, that the child would be banished forever, and the queen too, with the possibility that the queen might also lose her head. Awful, man. Awful. So, well, obviously she had to run away. But there was a little arrangement that was made prior to this escape. And what it was this, that the queen had a sister who was a beautiful fairy. And they were both pregnant at the same time. And the fairy promised her sister that should the fairy give birth to a boy and the queen give birth to a girl, she would happily exchange the infants for the queen's sake, and they would each raise their niece or nephew, respectively, on their own. Well, the fairy trusted the child to the zephyrs, the winds, and they gently carried her son to the castle, or at least that's what they intended. But on their way, they ran into some other winds, and there was a whole combustion of change, and the poor little baby boy dropped into a field of what? Of pinks. The fairy, of course, didn't know this, and the queen, expecting the baby boy to arrive very soon, panicked and then ran away through the forest, found the lodger, the laborer's lodge, and now you've had the story. Felicia's absolutely, positively amazed. And so when she goes to get the pinks from under her brother's bed, for that's where they were, the pinks speak to her. "Oh, darling Felicia, you are the most kind, the most patient, and the most generous and beautiful woman in all the world." Well, by this time, she's very used to cabbages, hens, pinks speaking to her. So, of course, she's quite delighted. And then she goes to the forest to bring the pinks to the fairy queen of the forest. And lo and behold, the pinks turn into the very son that had been born at the same time Felicia was born. And the queen of the forest, who was that fairy, the pink's mother, bestows upon Felicia her son, who, of course, is taken aback and amazed, but in truth, he proved the perfect partner. And so the two children would be cousins, first cousins, married, which happened in those days. And they truly did, with the queen. And they were about to live happily ever after, but then what about Bruno, you're asking? And the queen said, should we give him a good punishment for the way he has treated you? But because Felicia was always kind and forgiving, she said, no, let us bless him with some sustenance and a nicer house to live in, and perhaps even find him a suitable wife who might bring back his more proper disposition. And so with a sigh, the queen does. Bruno makes off pretty good in this story, but all the same, Felicia and Prince Pink and her mother-in-law returned to her castle amongst the fairies, and they lived happily ever after. Thanks so much for joining me. Hope you enjoyed Felicia and the Pot of Pinks. There's other variations which you may be more aware of. There was even a little episode with the rats, but I left that out. Have a wonderful Friday night, a beautiful weekend, and a great week. God bless you. Good night, everyone.